Have you ever been punished just for minding your own business? My wife Lana didn't plant roses to make a statement. She just loved the way they reminded her of her grandmother's backyard in Fresno. She worked long hours as a home nurse, so when she got a rare Saturday off, she spent it in the dirt. Sun hat on, earbuds in, humming along with Johnny Cash while pruning and watering. That Saturday felt like spring had finally settled into our neighborhood. Birds nesting in the oaks, kids chasing chalk-drawn taggins across driveways, a breeze warm enough to keep the windows open. I remember sipping coffee and watching her bend to trim a sunburned stem when a white SUV slowed to a crawl in front of our house. The HOA president, Karen Thistle. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She pulled over, parked illegally at the corner of our lot, and stepped out with her signature foam visor, yoga set, and a manila envelope stuffed under her arm like it was a legal summons. Lana barely looked up. Karen marched up the walkway, heels tapping like a judge's gavel. "You've ignored 3 citations. This garden is non-compliant." Lana took out one earbud. "I'm sorry?" "The irrigation system you're using, not HOA approved. You didn't submit the landscaping plan for this flower bed. The gnome is considered excessive decor per Section 5.3. And your watering hours are outside the designated window." Lana blinked. "It's 8:05. The HOA window starts at 8. "Actually, watering starts at 8:15, per the updated addendum," Karen snapped, pulling out a laminated sheet like it was the gospel. I came outside, still in my slippers. "Is this necessary?" Karen didn't look at me. She pulled a phone from her waistband, opened the HOA app, and began taking photos, close-ups of the hose, the rose bush, the dirt. Lana's hands tightened around her garden gloves. "You're being cited again. I'll be reporting this to the board. I also have footage from Wednesday morning of unauthorized use of a motion-activated sprinkler system. It scared my dog." "You trespassed into our yard and triggered it yourself," I said, stepping between them. Karen leaned closer, her voice icy. "HOA property extends to 10 inches beyond the curb. Know the rules before you violate them." Then she turned on her heel and walked away, texting furiously. By Monday, Lana received a $250 fine taped to our front door. No envelope, just the paper, curling from the heat, written in red ink. She didn't cry, she didn't shout, she did something worse. She stopped gardening. I didn't know what silence could do to a house. The birds stopped lingering, the flowers wilted faster than usual. Even the cat looked annoyed at the lack of fresh sunbeams falling through the open windows. Meanwhile, Karen's crusade escalated. She posted our violations in the neighborhood Facebook group. A photo of Lana bending over the roses was captioned, "Some residents think they're above community rules. This affects all of us." Commenters piled on. A few called us selfish. One said, "We're bringing Fresno energy to our cul-de-sac." A single mom named Jules tried to defend us, but Karen quickly tagged a board member and quoted obscure bylaws. The next week, someone snuck into our yard at night and ripped out the sprinkler stakes. Then came the twist. The mailman, a quiet guy named Thomas, who always wore a back brace and carried dog treats, caught Karen on his route, snapping photos not just of our house, but also of another neighbor's garden where an autistic boy had planted sunflowers as therapy. She was filing multiple reports under the same non-compliance clause. Thomas said nothing, at least not until he saw Karen toss our broken gnome into the HOA dumpster. That's when he decided to do what no one else had dared. He turned on his body cam.
Thomas didn't tell us right away. He told Jules. She was the one neighbor Karen hadn't fully silenced, mainly because Jules lived in a rental and wasn't under direct HOA rule. But she had eyes and a heart, and more importantly, she had connections. Her sister ran a small but growing YouTube channel about neighborhood injustices. Stuff like illegal HOA crackdowns, stolen mail, and that viral clip where a man was fined for painting his garage the same shade of beige it had always been. By the following Thursday, Thomas had given Jules a copy of the footage. It was short, less than 90 seconds, but it was crystal clear, drone-level clear. Karen, in her white tennis skirt, visor gleaming, is seen standing in the early morning haze by the corner of our lawn. In one hand, she holds her phone. In the other, she reaches into her oversized purse and pulls out a metal object, the base of our gnome. With one swift motion, she hurls it into a rolling trash bin at the end of the sidewalk, then looks around quickly before striding off. The body cam timestamp is 6:43 a.m. Jules uploaded the clip anonymously. The video was titled, "This is Who Runs Our Neighborhood." It hit 20,000 views in 4 hours. By dinner time, the neighborhood group chat had exploded. One resident asked, "Is this real?" Another said, "That looks like the corner of Alder and Birch. That's Lena's place, right?" And then the questions turned. People started talking about Karen's pattern. Old screenshots surfaced. A woman fined for excessive Halloween decorations, a string of lights, and one inflatable ghost. A veteran neighbor forced to repaint his tiny porch swing because it was too patriotic. A backyard chicken coop in violation despite a city permit. Someone found a post from 2 years ago where Karen accused a teenage boy of menacing for selling lemonade too close to the HOA mailbox kiosk. It wasn't just us. It never was. Still, Karen didn't back down. At 9:12 p.m., she posted an official response in the group. The footage shared is misleading and possibly doctored. Anyone who has served on a community board understands the importance of maintaining aesthetic harmony and enforcing shared standards. Targeted harassment of HOA leadership will be documented and forwarded to legal counsel. 5 minutes later, Jules posted a reply. Just a single still image from the body cam. Karen mid-throw, visor tilted, jaw clenched, and the caption read, "Explain this." The next morning, our lawn was full again. Not of roses, but of reporters. Local news vans parked along Birch Avenue. Someone from Channel 4 showed up with a mic and an eager intern. They'd seen the viral clip. They wanted a statement. Lana refused, but Jules didn't. She stepped forward on our driveway, braids loose, baby on her hip, and told the truth with a calm fury I'll never forget. She's targeting people for doing good things. That's what this is. Gardens, flags, kids selling lemonade. This isn't about rules. This is about power. The intern asked her, "Do you think Karen Thistle should be removed from the HOA board?" Jules gave the camera a look so sharp it could cut bone. "I think she should explain why she destroyed a child's therapy garden." That's when we found out. Karen had filed 3 separate citations against the Patel family next door, whose 8-year-old Dev had planted a raised flower bed as part of his occupational therapy. Sunflowers, mint, lavender. Karen had called it agricultural encroachment. She'd reported it as a possible fire hazard. But what she didn't know, Dev had a GoPro mounted to the fence post, for fun, to watch bees and squirrels. That video caught her stepping into the Patel yard last weekend, snapping off 2 stalks of sunflower and stuffing them into her tote bag. That video came out Friday morning. By Friday evening, the HOA board held an emergency closed-door meeting. It didn't stay closed for long. 2 board members, Carolyn and Mark, resigned on the spot. Carolyn's letter went public on the neighborhood forum. She didn't name Karen directly, but the message was clear. "I cannot in good conscience continue to serve an organization that prioritizes integrity over intimidation." The rest of the board went silent. Karen, she doubled down. She showed up at our door that night with 2 men in gray polos, private security from a firm she said was contracted by the HOA. She tried to hand Lana a cease and desist letter. "You're complicit in a campaign of harassment," she hissed. Lana took it, folded it carefully, and handed it back. "My flowers were never a threat. You were." That night, our daughter, 15-year-old Maddie, did something none of us expected. She stitched together the two clips, Thomas's footage and Dev's sunflower theft, and added subtitles, music, and a voiceover. Then she uploaded it to TikTok. It got 1.2 million views in 36 hours. The caption? She tried to control the garden fought back.
By Saturday morning, The Garden Fought Back had become more than a TikTok title. It was a movement. Neighborhood kids started chalking the phrase across sidewalks in pastel colors. People tied ribbons to their mailboxes, green for peace, yellow for truth. One family even planted marigolds at the edge of their lawn with a sign that said, "In honor of every flower she tried to uproot." We hadn't planned any of it, but something about the quiet rebellion spoke to people. It wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about everything she represented. Control masked as order, fear masked as safety. At 11:30 a.m., a familiar Prius rolled to a stop in front of our house. Officer Henderson. He was the same cop Karen had called weeks ago, back when Lana was cited for violating HOA fine protocol. That time, he had walked up with a neutral expression, calmly suggesting we comply to keep things civil. He hadn't made eye contact with Lana then. But this time, he greeted her with a soft nod and a folder in hand. "Ma'am, I came to apologize and to ask a few questions." The apology was unexpected. The folder was not. Inside were printed screenshots, HOA reports, timestamps, community complaints, even a still from the video Jules had posted. Officer Henderson said he'd gone back to review the body cam footage from his first visit. Something hadn't sat right with him since that day. He said she had already written the citation before I even stepped out of the vehicle, didn't even wait for you to speak. He told us Karen had filed over 80 formal complaints in just the last calendar year, more than the rest of the neighborhood combined. The majority were aimed at women of color, renters, single parents, or families with children who played outside too loudly. It was a pattern. He handed us a card. "I can't speak for the HOA, but this is an open civil case now. If you'd like to submit a statement, we're listening." By Monday, our mailbox was overflowing. Letters, cards, notes from neighbors we'd never really spoken to. One was written in crayon and said, "Tell your wife her garden made my mom smile." Another came from a war veteran on the next block who said Karen fined him for hanging an American flag on Memorial Day. He'd never fought back. Until now. And then there was a typed letter from Carolyn, the former HOA board member. I knew she was harsh, but I never realized how many people she'd silenced. "Thank you for holding the mirror up. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner." But even as the community rallied, Karen's behavior grew more erratic. On Tuesday morning, someone spotted her at 5:40 a.m., pacing along the sidewalk in front of our home, taking pictures again. This time, she wore sunglasses and a hoodie. She posted a blurry photo of our porch to the neighborhood app and captioned it, "Is this the kind of surveillance we want in our family community?" Nobody liked the post. One neighbor commented, "Ma'am, you're the one taking the pictures." Another replied, "We saw the footage. Sit down." Karen deleted her account by noon. But the damage wasn't done. Not for her. Not yet. Because at 3:17 p.m. that same day, a notification pinged through every homeowner's inbox. HOA board emergency vote. Removal of board president. Attached was a PDF with supporting documentation, body cam evidence, HOA complaint logs, 3 separate testimonies from residents about harassment and property damage. It was happening, and she knew it. That evening, we watched from inside as Karen stood at the cul-de-sac with a handwritten sign propped against her SUV. "This is a witch hunt. I am the real victim." She live-streamed for 20 minutes. blamed social media manipulation, said we were lying for attention, accused Lana of being an anti-community agitator. Then, shockingly, she brought up Lana's immigration status, which wasn't just false, it was a deliberate slander. The backlash was immediate. TikTok caught it. So did the local news. So did a civil rights attorney named Michelle Yen, who contacted us the next morning. Would your wife like to file a defamation claim? Because what I just saw is actionable. But that wasn't what Lana wanted. She didn't want to sue, she just wanted her peace back. The garden, the roses, the ability to live in a neighborhood without someone weaponizing the rulebook every time she smiled too long on her own lawn. So she declined. She told Michelle, "I don't want money. I want it to stop." And maybe finally it would. Because the board voted unanimously on Thursday night. Karen Thistle was officially removed from her position as HOA president. An email went out with the results. She would remain a resident, but no longer had enforcement authority. Her previous violations were under review. A temporary liaison was appointed. An older, retired school principal who made it clear, "We will not tolerate abuse of power, not from anyone." That weekend, Lana went outside. Not to dig, not yet. She just sat on the porch, a quiet moment. Sunlight on her shoulders, hands folded in her lap. Within 10 minutes, 2 kids from the block came by and gave her a potted lavender plant. One of them said, "We're starting a community garden in our front yard. Mom said we can." Then one by one, other neighbors followed. The Johnsons brought seeds. Jules brought lemonade. Someone brought a sign that said, "This lawn is defended by joy." And Lana smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just relieved. Almost like she believed for the first time in weeks that it was over. Almost. Because Karen hadn't moved out, and she hadn't stopped watching. And as much as the garden healed, there was still a question that lingered over every new flower bed and potted basil plant. A question no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone could feel in the air, like heat off concrete. If she hadn't been exposed, how far would she have gone?
Summer rolled in hot and fast. The lavender bloomed, the roses recovered. Lana went back to her Saturday rituals, watering early, trimming with music in her ears. But there was always a flicker of tension in her shoulders, as if she expected a voice behind her saying, "Violation." For a while, it didn't come. Karen stayed quiet. Her house sat still like a stage set abandoned mid-play. Front blinds always tilted, front yard suddenly overgrown. The same SUV, same visor on the dash, same white tulips now browned at the edges. But there were no more citations, no more early morning photos, no more passive-aggressive notes on doors. Then came the petition. It showed up in mailboxes across the neighborhood with no sender listed. Printed on heavy paper, sealed in crisp white envelopes. Restore order. Reinstatement proposal for HOA President Karen Thistle. Lana opened ours and just stared. No words, no signature, no official board seal, just a letter full of vague grievances about mob rule, unjust media exposure, and a community without leadership. She didn't say anything. She just folded the letter in half and burned it in our barbecue pit. We stood by and watched the edges curl black. But it wasn't just one letter. Over the next 3 days, Jules found a stack of them left at the park bulletin board. Thomas saw someone slipping one through the daycare fence, and Mark, one of the resigned board members, got his delivered by hand at 9 p.m. by a woman in dark glasses who wouldn't say her name. Someone was organizing. Quietly, strategically, and they were backing Karen. Then came the dog incident. Dev's family, the Patels, had adopted a rescue pup, a tiny mutt named Pixel, that barked like a goose and wore a sunflower print harness.
Dev loved that dog like it was his sibling. One morning, Mrs. Patel woke up to find Pixel's water bowl filled with bleach. They had a camera. The footage showed a shadowy figure leaning over the gate at dawn, gwint hands quick pour from a sports bottle, then gone. Too dark to see clearly, but the build, the posture, it looked familiar. But there was no proof, no face. And Karen, of course, had alibis. She'd been out of town, attending a wellness retreat. The police took a report. The HOA liaison promised support. Pixel survived, barely. But something had shifted. The air turned tight again. The fear crept back in. Not just for us, but for the neighborhood. Because now we knew she didn't need the title to keep causing harm. That's when Lana decided to speak. She hadn't given a public statement, not during the vote, not after the viral video, not when the local radio wanted her for a soundbite. But now, she wrote an open letter, printed it, signed it, posted it on the HOA community board in bold, black font. It read, "I never asked to become the face of anything. All I did was plant a garden. But when someone tries to poison that, literally or figuratively, silence becomes complicity. I want to live in a neighborhood where rules protect people, not punish them. Where community means kindness, not control. Where we're allowed to be different, as long as we're decent. If you agree, plant something. Anything. A flower, a seed, a sign. Because if we don't grow something together, we let fear win." Lana Moreno. By nightfall, 14 front yards had new potted plants. By the weekend, 30. By Monday, a TV crew came back. They called it the Quiet Bloom Rebellion. Karen responded, of course. Not directly, but through a burner account on the neighborhood app. "Rebellion? You're vandalizing uniformity. We're not a commune. We're a protected class of property. Standards matter." She denied sending the petition. She denied knowing about the bleach. She said, "The real problem is the way that emotional manipulation was being disguised as justice." Someone commented, "It's not manipulation if it's the truth." And then another, "It's not emotional, it's human." Then, "You could have just left the flowers alone." Still, we knew it wasn't over. Not until there were consequences. And then, unexpectedly, they came. Not through the HOA, not through the cops, but through a former neighbor. His name was Curtis Bell. He'd moved away 5 years ago, used to live 3 doors down from Karen. His niece had seen the TikTok and showed him the footage. Curtis wrote a letter. Then he sent it to the city's civil mediation board, and the local news, and the HOA. In it, he detailed an incident from 2019. Karen had falsely accused him of threatening her dog when he reported her for digging a trench behind his property line. She'd filed a restraining order, called animal control, and left anonymous complaints with his employer. He never fought back. He moved instead. But now, he said, "This isn't new. It's just finally being recorded." The HOA couldn't ignore that. And they didn't. They hired an outside investigator for the first time in the neighborhood's history. They called it a wellness audit, but we all knew what it meant. 3 weeks later, a notice appeared taped to every mailbox. The HOA acknowledges a history of overreach and misconduct under the prior president's term. New reforms will be proposed at the upcoming community assembly. Residents are encouraged to attend. Karen's house was dark that night. No porch light, no SUV, no movement. And yet somehow, Lana still looked uneasy. Not scared, but sad. That Saturday, I found her sitting in the garden again. Gloves on, knees muddy,
one hand gently patting soil over a small new plant. I asked her what it was. She said foxglove. It's poisonous if misused. I raised an eyebrow. She smiled faintly. But beautiful, if you know how to tend it. Then she looked up and whispered, some things grow stronger after being nearly destroyed.
Gentle, truthful, collective storytelling. Documentary realism with poetic resonance. Plain spoken, but emotionally rich. Everyday people who stand up quietly but firmly. Healing, steady, honest, quietly powerful. Slow and intentional, allowing silence to speak. The night of the HOA assembly felt more like a town hall than anything our neighborhood had ever seen. Fold-out chairs lined the community center. The air buzzed not from conflict, but from expectation. For the first time, people weren't just showing up to complain about lawn lengths or paint swatches. They were showing up because they'd seen what happened when no one did. Lana almost didn't go. She didn't want to be a symbol, didn't want to see Karen's face again. She just wanted to water her garden in peace. But when we pulled up, something stopped her. At the entrance stood a boy holding a mason jar with mint sprigs inside. It was Dev. His mother stood behind him, smiling nervously. She told me mint helps calm nerves, so I brought this, in case you needed it tonight. Lana took the jar with both hands. She didn't say a word. She just walked inside. The board started with formalities, budget talk, fence policies, a minor debate about the community pool. But then came item 7C on the agenda. Reform proposals in response to community misconduct. They began reading off a series of changes. All citations now required photographic proof from 2 independent board members. Anonymous complaints would no longer result in fines. Homeowners had the right to request mediation before any enforcement action. And perhaps most importantly, any resident found to have abused their role to target, harass, or retaliate would be barred from holding office again. At that, murmurs spread across the room. Not everyone clapped, but no one interrupted. Then they opened the floor, and Jules stood first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I've lived here for 8 years, she said. I paid my dues. But this place never felt like a community until we stood up for each other. I don't care if you're old or new, a renter or an owner, HOA or not. If you plant something in good faith, it deserves to grow. Applause rippled through the room. A few people stood to speak after that, quietly, respectfully. Some admitted they'd once supported Karen, or at least stayed silent out of fear. One man said, I used to think the rules were what kept things safe. Now I think maybe it's us looking out for each other. Then it was Lana's turn. She didn't plan to speak. She hadn't written anything down. But Dev handed her the jar again, and she took a breath and stepped to the front. I love this neighborhood, she began. Even after everything. Even after I stopped gardening. Even after my name was dragged online and on doorsteps and through every whisper someone was too afraid to say to my face. She paused, voice shaking. I'm not angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of seeing kindness punished and fear rewarded. Tired of watching people choose control over compassion. Tired of people thinking flowers are more dangerous than silence. She looked straight at the board. I don't want power. I just want fairness. I want to plant something and not be afraid of who's watching. And I want everyone here to know it's okay to speak. It's okay to be different. That's what gardens are. They're supposed to be wild sometimes. The room was silent, and then slowly they stood. Not everyone, but enough. And they clapped, not just for Lana, but for what it meant. Karen wasn't there that night, but she was watching. We know because Jules received an email the next morning from an encrypted address. The mob wins today, enjoy your weeds. It didn't scare anyone. If anything, it confirmed what we already knew. She wasn't done, just defanged. But something else came out of that email. An unexpected piece of information. Jules traced the metadata. Her brother was a systems analyst. The email had been sent from a location outside of state lines. Nevada, Reno, to be exact. Karen was gone. She'd left quietly in the early hours just 2 days after the petition failed. The house still sat empty, but now the SUV was missing. The blinds were drawn permanently shut. A for sale sign went up a week later. The listing said, "Quiet corner lot, HOA compliant, motivated seller." Life moved forward, as it always does. But things didn't go back to normal. They got better. People waved more. Sidewalk chalk came back. The little library box that Karen once called an eyesore got repainted and restocked, now officially sponsored by the HOA with a plaque that read, "For everyone, no exceptions." Lana started teaching a monthly gardening circle at the community center. Nothing fancy, just neighbors bringing clippings, seeds, soil. People who never spoke before now swapped herbs and stories. Even Dev's sunflower patch came back. Bigger this time, ringed with chicken wire and community-signed rocks. One said, "Hope." Another said, "Enough." And every Saturday morning when Lana watered her plants, someone new would stop to say hi. Just for a moment. Just to remind her, we saw what happened. We remember. But for all the peace that returned, one thing never quite settled. That question, the one Lana once whispered when the garden was quiet and the sky too blue to believe. If she hadn't been exposed, how far would she have gone? Because the truth was, Karen wasn't unique. She was just visible. She was the symptom of a deeper problem, one that exists wherever fear and authority mix too easily, where quiet harm hides under layers of concern, civility, and policy. And in neighborhoods across the country, there are still people like her, watching, judging, weaponizing the rules. So maybe the story wasn't just ours. Maybe it was a warning. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a seed, planted in truth, watered by community, ready to bloom into something more. But then came item 7C on the agenda.
Three weeks after Karen's departure, the house she once occupied remained quiet, but not untouched. The front lawn was browning fast in the July heat. Mail overflowed from the box. A vine curled around the porch railing, unattended, reaching like it was trying to escape. The for sale sign leaned slightly, one corner unmoored from the ground. Most people passed by without comment, but not Maddie. One night, just before sunset, she tugged Lana's sleeve as they walked past it on the way home from the park. "Mom," she said softly, "can I plant something there?" Lana paused. "At Karen's? She's gone, but the ground's still here," Maddie said. Lana looked at the house, then at her daughter's dirt-smudged fingers. "What do you want to plant?" "Sunflowers. For Dev. For everyone." There was a silence between them, heavy, but not sad. Then Lana nodded. "We'll ask the board." They didn't have to. The next morning a note was pinned to their mailbox in soft blue ink. "If Maddie wants to plant something, no one's stopping her. HOA liaison and fan of sunflowers." The
The planting happened quietly. No media, no TikTok, just a dozen neighbors and a few kids with trowels and seed packets. Jules brought lemonade. Thomas handed out garden gloves. Even the former board member, Mark, showed up with compost and a folding chair. They didn't talk about Karen. They didn't need to. Instead, they talked about heat waves and music, about how the HOA meetings now started with a community shout-out rather than a list of violations, about Dev's dog Pixel, who is now healthy and barked cheerfully from a shaded stroller nearby. The sunflowers were planted in a curve along the outer edge of Karen's lawn, where they'd catch the most light. Maddie pressed each seed in carefully, whispering something only the earth could hear. At the center, they placed a small wooden sign. Dev wrote it in blocky, determined letters. What you tried to bury came back stronger. Later that week, a letter arrived at our door. Not from Karen, but about her. It came from her sister, a woman named Diane who lived in Montana. The envelope was handwritten, the return address real. Inside was a single-page note. I don't expect you to forgive her. I just wanted you to know she's not well. Karen's always lived like the world was a fight she had to win, even when there was no opponent. She's in counseling now. She's angry, but quieter. I saw the video, I saw the garden. I hope it brings peace to the people she hurt. Thank you for standing up. You didn't just protect yourselves, you helped people see what silence protects. I hope you never need to fight like that again. Diane Thistle. Lana read it in the kitchen, said nothing for a long time, then slid the letter into a kitchen drawer, next to the mint jar from Dev. Even bullies have sisters, she murmured. Maybe that's why we keep fighting, so they don't have to keep apologizing. By late August, the sunflower shoots had broken the surface, stretching stubborn and green through dry, unforgiving dirt. Someone left a garden gnome in the middle of the plot. Not a new one, a cracked, repaired version. Its paint chipped, its smile crooked, but it stood tall. Lana bent to look at it and found something carved in the base. Justice is watching. She didn't know who left it. She didn't ask. It stayed there. A silent reminder. A marker. A totem. And then, just when we thought the story was over, the twist came. But it didn't come from Karen. It came from the city. In early September, a letter arrived from the Office of Community Development, not just to us, to every household in the HOA. It was part of a routine audit, triggered by reports of HOA overreach and civil complaints. Attached was a survey. It asked, have you ever felt intimidated by a homeowners association member? Have you received a violation you believe to be discriminatory or retaliatory? Would you support a city ordinance requiring third-party oversight for HOAs? There were blank lines. There was space to name names, and there in small print at the bottom, anonymous responses only, but your voice will shape future policy. That night over dinner, Maddie asked, does this mean it'll happen to less people now? Lana looked at her daughter. I don't know, baby, but I know it means someone listened. Over the following weeks, neighbors talked in hushed voices about what they'd write. Some were hesitant. Some were angry. Some had already mailed their responses. One woman cried when she dropped hers off at the mailbox. Not because she was afraid, but because it was the first time anyone had asked her if the rules had ever hurt her. And now it was her turn to speak. The garden kept growing. So did the story. It no longer belonged to one family, or one street, or one HOA. It became a quiet symbol of what could happen when good people stopped pretending things were just fine, when they stopped watering silence, when they chose to plant truth instead.
The last sunflower bloomed in October. Tall, unapologetic, its petals caught the morning light like gold leaf. People stopped to look, even strangers. A UPS driver once got out of his truck to take a picture. A retired couple from 2 neighborhoods over brought folding chairs one afternoon and just sat there in silence, watching the wind move through the yellow heads. No plaque was ever added, no media returned, no one went viral again. It was better that way, because what mattered now wasn't clicks, it was continuity. People still argued in the neighborhood. There were still loud dogs and overgrown hedges and missed dews, but something had shifted. A weight had been named, and in naming it, we had stolen its power. And then came the city vote. The city passed Resolution 14B, an ordinance requiring independent review boards for HOAs that reached a certain size. It didn't dissolve them, it didn't ban them, but it placed a guardrail where there once was none. The mayor's office called it a safeguard for everyday residents. We called it something else. A win. Not a perfect one, but a beginning. The kind Dev would have fought for. One afternoon, weeks later, Lana received a call. Unknown number, blocky reception, but the voice was unmistakable. "Lana? It's Karen." The air went still. Lana stepped outside, standing beneath the maple tree that had once been at the center of the original dispute. Its leaves were turning red now, like someone had struck a match inside each one. "I'm not calling to fight," Karen said quickly. "I don't want anything." "What do you want then?" Karen was silent for a moment. Then, "To tell the truth, for once." Lana didn't speak. She listened. Karen continued, voice stiff and unfamiliar, like a woman learning how to walk again after years of limping. "I was raised to believe order meant control, that if you didn't enforce it, people would take advantage, that if you didn't strike first, you'd be swallowed. I didn't realize how lonely that made me, or how dangerous." Silence. "I hurt a lot of people. I told myself I was protecting the neighborhood, but really I was protecting my fear, and I used power to cover it." Lana leaned her head against the porch beam. The paint was peeling slightly. She hadn't even noticed. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you didn't just beat me, you survived me. And I watched what came after. That garden. The way people changed. I was wrong, and I needed to say it." Lana exhaled. "And what do you want me to do with this apology?" "Nothing. Just let it live. Just let it be real." Then the line went quiet. That winter, the sunflowers withered. The frost came fast and harsh, but no one tore them out. They stood there, dry, skeletal, brittle, but still upright. On the shortest day of the year, someone placed a small lantern beneath them, battery-operated. It pulsed softly through the dark. And the next day, there were 3, then 5, then 12. A year later, Karen's house finally sold. A couple with 2 kids moved in. They painted the shutters robin's egg blue. They built a tiny free library and filled it with mysteries and comics. And they asked Maddie if she wanted to help plant again in spring. She smiled and nodded. But this time, we're adding daisies. Dev liked those too. Life didn't forget what happened, but it moved forward with it, not away from it. In early summer, a city podcast did a segment on the HOA case, now part of a training curriculum for community mediators. They interviewed Lana, Jules, even Mark. Maddie said no, but she drew a picture they featured in the podcast art. A sunflower with 1 broken petal and a speech bubble that said, "Even crushed things grow again." And then came the surprise ending. During a local town hall about expanding Resolution 14B statewide, a woman stepped up to the mic to speak during the public comment section. Gray coat, small notebook, nervous fingers. "My name is Diane Thistle." And that's when we realized, Karen's sister. I don't live here, but I watched what happened. I watched a community be cracked open by someone who claimed to protect it, and I watched how you responded. She held up a photo, a faded shot of the sunflower garden in full bloom. I could have shut down. I could have gone numb. Instead, you organized. You stood up. You stayed kind. That's what real accountability looks like. Not vengeance, not silence, but a truth that stays lit even when the lights go out. The room fell silent. Then someone stood up and clapped. Then another and another. The final garden now has a name. Not official, not on any sign, but the neighborhood kids call it Dev's Patch. Even kids who never met him, even kids who weren't born yet when Karen was in power. Because stories pass down, because flowers do too. Because somewhere between what was broken and what bloomed, we chose to root ourselves in hope. Not perfection, not erasure, just hope. The kind that grows crooked, but strong. The kind that dares to bloom where someone once tried to cut everything down. Would you have spoken up if this happened in your neighborhood? Or would you have stayed quiet?